Bedlam 2020 was unique, of course, a showdown between the two Spencers and a showdown between two of the Big 12's best defenses. Oklahoma won big on both counts. For SI Sooners, allsooners.com, I'm John Hoover, along with Parker Thune, and tonight, the Sooners just routed Oklahoma State tonight, 41-13 at Owen Field, and it probably wasn't even that close. Frankly, Parker, this one was over early.
It really was, John, and Oklahoma put to rest any doubt that they're the better team in the state of Oklahoma, quite honestly, in the first quarter of this contest. They scored on their first 3 offensive drives just right down the field every single time. It looked for all the world like this was going to become a blowout, which in the end it was, but things slowed down offensively for the Sooners after that. And then on the flip side, Oklahoma State couldn't seem to get any traction early. Chuba Hubbard never really got going. You had the interception by David Agwebu of Spencer Sanders early on that helped the Sooners jump out to that 21-0 lead. So really, Oklahoma, it almost seemed like they finished this game in the first quarter, and then all they had to do over the last 3 periods of play was just clean up.
Which they didn't do in previous Big 12 games, you'll remember. So being able to finish strong was important for this team. They did it tonight against a really good Oklahoma State team. Really talented, really quality, very well coached. Oklahoma was just better tonight. The much-anticipated showdown between Spencer Rattler and Spencer Sanders just never materialized. I mean, OSU Spencer Sanders was injured early, sacked a lot, left the game, but then he came back in. Weird. I mean, somebody was saying they looked like he got hit in the head, might have suffered a concussion of some kind, but he's back in the game to finish in the fourth quarter, and you know what? Nothing happened. Spencer Rattler, meanwhile, threw for 301 yards, accounted for 5 total touchdowns. This was as big a lopsided matchup as there was in the game, Parker.
Yeah, certainly, and Rattler was on his game from the get-go. I would argue it was probably his finest game as a Sooner thus far. 17 for 24, 301 yards, as you mentioned, threw for 4 touchdowns, rushed for another. He seemed so comfortable at the helm of this offense, and I think part of that is due in part, John, to the fact that he didn't have to carry the load for Oklahoma tonight. He wasn't going to have to throw the ball 40 times in order for Oklahoma to win. Oklahoma was content to play solid defense, establish the run, and let Spencer Rattler make the plays that were necessary in the passing game to put up enough points to put the Sooners in a position to win a football game, which he did.
Yeah, you know who carried the load tonight? It was Ramondre Stevenson and Ronnie Perkins. Wrecking shop out there. The new guys is what they're playing like. They're playing like guys with fresh legs who weren't here in the September and October losses. So they just destroyed Oklahoma State tonight. Perkins, 2 sacks, knocked Spencer Sanders out of the game early, came back and hit him again late. Finished, you look at Stevenson, finished with 141 yards rushing, 195 total yards from scrimmage. He was the best running back on the field tonight, and that includes a guy by the name of Chuba Hubbard, who led the nation last year in total rushing, over 2,000 yards, but tonight, just 8 rushes for 44 yards, Parker.
And a lot of those 44 yards came on 1 carry.
Yeah.
Chuba Hubbard could absolutely get nothing going against the Oklahoma defensive front, and it was kind of to be expected, right? We expected that this wasn't going to be a banner game for Hubbard, just given the state of Oklahoma State's offensive line at this point in time. But the Sooners were overwhelmingly better in the trenches, and it spelled doom for Oklahoma State's offense because they were completely unable to establish the run early. They fell behind, and they had to rely on a true freshman quarterback in Shane Illingworth to try and bring them back from that deficit. It was over from the get-go for Oklahoma State. 2 drives into this game, you could kind of see the writing on the wall, and the Pokes were in a really bad spot very early on and just couldn't dig themselves out of the hole that they dug in the first quarter.
Oklahoma was the team that nobody wanted to play. You spot them 21 points in a game like this, a rivalry game, you got no chance. Sooners now 6-2 overall, 5-2 in Big 12 play. They're back at it next week, road trip to West Virginia. I'll be there for that one. After that, the season finale against Baylor right here, December 5th. Parker, if OU wins those 2 games, they're basically in the driver's seat for another shot for the Big 12 title. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover, SI Sooners, allsooners.com.